Nepal's anti-corruption agency has filed what it describes as the largest corruption case in the country's history. It has charged 55 senior Nepali officials and employees of the Chinese state-owned contractor CAMC with inflating the cost of the Pokhara International Airport, which is a flagship project under China's Belt and Road Initiative, by roughly $74 million. Hello and welcome to The Print. My name is Debdutta and today we discuss why has the Nepalese anti-graft authority charged a Chinese company with corruption in the Pokhara International Airport case. Now, the Commission for the Investigation of Abuse of Authority filed the case on Sunday at Nepal's special court, naming 55 individuals, which include 5 former ministers and 10 former secretaries, along with China's CAMC Engineering Co. Limited, which is the airport's builder. Now, CAMC is the construction wing of China's state-owned conglomerate, Sinomark. In its report, the agency alleges that Nepali officials and the Chinese contractor colluded to deliberately inflate costs through fake invoices, overbilling, and fraudulent procurement, including usage of substandard materials. The project was made out of a BRI loan and not a grant. Therefore, Nepal now will have to pay the entirety of the inflated amount. The graft agency, on its part, has asked the court to recover 8.36 billion rupees from each of the 56 defendants. This is the largest financial penalty the agency has ever sought in the country. The final sentencing, however, depends on a court verdict. The anti-graft authority also said that 3 separate investigations are already underway related to the Pokhara airport, and a Nepali special court had in December 2024 convicted 11 individuals in a corruption case involving purchase of 2 Airbus A330s. Now, what is this scam all about and how did it unfold? Nepal has been wanting to make an international airport in Pokhara since almost 1975 in a bid to globalize the tourist destination, which looks over the Annapurna circuit. The project was bankrolled from the beginning by Chinese state-owned infrastructure arm, the China CAMC Engineering Co. The anti-graft charge sheet filed now reads that CAMC acted with malified intent to secure and influence the project. What was the malified intent? To begin with, the airport's site selection, detailed engineering work, and master plan of the new Pokhara airport were prepared in 1971 by DIWI, which is a German consulting engineering firm, under an Asian Development Bank loan for Nepal's airport development project. In 1975, the King Birendra-led government acquired more than 158 hectares of land to build the airport. However, due to the decade-long insurgency, the project saw setbacks. In 2006, when the insurgency ended, locals of Pokhara renewed the demand for airport construction. Then, in 2009, the elected Maoist government, led by Pushpakamal Dahal, agreed to the construction, but the project was only revived 2 years later in 2011. Now, here's the catch. In 2011, it was done via a deal that was reached behind closed doors with none other than the Chinese. In 2011, Finance Minister Barshaman Poon of the Maoist Party was found to have secretly signed a Memorandum of Understanding or MOU with the China CAMC Engineering Co., agreeing to support the firm in securing the construction bid. This secret deal surfaced after the Nepali Congress leader Deep Kumar Upadhyay circulated the MOU during a meeting of the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, which then summoned the Tourist Ministry and the Aviation Authority officials regarding the unusually short bidding deadline. After the revelation in the Parliament, the controversial MOU was then scrapped. Now, as the project became increasingly controversial, Pokhara residents staged protests and several hundred demonstrators marched to Singh Darbar in Kathmandu, demanding that construction of the long-delayed regional international airport begin immediately. Then, on 9 February 2012, the Aviation Authority again invited fresh bids for the airport. Now, although it was a global tender, the condition was that the airport was to be constructed under the EPC or the turnkey model. This condition effectively then gave Chinese contractors a clear edge. This was so because in July 2011, the Tender Evaluation Committee opened the financial proposals. The lowest bidder was no other than the China CAMC, which quoted a price of $305 million, which was way higher than the government's estimate of $169.69 million. The Nepal government had at the time planned to borrow $145 million or more in soft loans to finance the airport. Now, this amount was pledged by Beijing from the surplus of the loan that it had originally allocated for the Trishuli 3A hydropower project, which was the first EPC project in Nepal. What is an EPC model? The EPC model, which is the engineering, procurement and construction model, is a project delivery system for large infrastructure projects where one single contractor handles all phases of design, right from engineering, procurement and building construction, which then delivers a complete ready-to-use facility, which is called a turnkey, to the owner and ensures a single point of responsibility. Interestingly, the other bidders were also Chinese. One was the Sino-Hydro Corporation and the China International Water and Electric Corporation, and the rest were China CAMC. But the project courted controversy again after labor unions at the Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal launched a protest citing excessive cost and arguing that this was not a financially viable project. Now, all the three proposals, like mentioned earlier, among around 9 bidders, were from contractors approved by the Chinese Exim Bank. This is because the bank had written to Nepal's finance ministry that it would not release the loan if it was not done by its own approved bidders. Now, following these unusual proposals, the anti-graft body seized tender documents on suspicion of financial irregularities. The constitutional body, however, shelved the case for years. Then, in January 2013, CAMC wrote to Nepal's tourism ministry expressing willingness to build the project at the original government estimated cost. Soon after, the China Airport Construction Company, which was a consultant hired by the CAMC, submitted a study claiming that the cost of the airport should come at around $264 million. Public outrage peaked when Pokhara residents launched a relay hunger strike in 2013 that lasted more than 100 days. Then, on April 2014, the Civil Aviation Authority Board finally approved the project at a revised cost of $215 million. The agreement was subsequently signed in May. Now, the soft loan agreement was signed during then Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's Beijing visit in March 2016. He then laid the foundation to commence the construction in 2016 and work began at the site on 1st of November 2017. The first tranche of loan disbursement to Nepal was made on 1st April 2018. Now, under the loan agreement, Nepal would receive the loan from China Exim Bank, of which 25% would be interest fee, and on the rest amount it was a 2% interest annually. The repayment period was set at 20 years, including a 7-year grace period. In October 2014, a meeting was held at the office of then Finance Minister Ram Sharan Mahat, involving the Finance Minister, Secretaries, the Minister of Law and the Acting Tourism Secretary, along with other bureaucrats at the Tourism Ministry and Under Secretaries. Now, according to the anti-grafts report released on Sunday, the entire thing was based on a bad faith decision, and the meeting concluded that the Tourism Ministry had submitted to the Cabinet a proposal for the approval of project at the revised cost of $215 million. In order to implement the contract, Finance Ministry officials and other ministers had on 2014 October decided to seek a loan assistance from none other than China's Exim Bank, and hence had accordingly submitted the loan application. As a result, the contract for the airport was implemented at an abnormally high cost. Now, between August 2018 and February 2024, a total of $224 million have already been paid to CAMC. This includes taxes. Now, out of this, $74 million was what was paid on artificially inflated cost estimates. Moreover, Nepal's aviation agency was supposed to have teams of domestic and international experts as consultants. But a New York Times investigation found that key roles were vacant and positions were filled relied on recent college graduates with almost no experience. The initial construction budget had earmarked $2.8 million for Nepal to hire consultants to make sure that CAMC on its part was abiding by international construction standards. But as the project went on, the Chinese firm and Nepal lowered that allocation to $10,000 using the money elsewhere. CAMC then completed earth filling work for the 8,200-foot runway but had no documentation that it had actually tested the soil density or that it had designed the airport drainage system without taking into account historical rainfall data in locations across Pokhara. This meant foregoing a standard practice in international construction. The consulting firm and the construction company are subsidiaries of Sinomark, which is a machinery giant ranked in Fortune Global 100. The potential for conflict of interest became even more pronounced in 2019 when CAMC acquired IPPR, turning it from a sister company into a direct subsidiary. Now, the fees to pay IPPR came from Nepal as part of its Chinese bank loan. Now, IPPR on its part even falsified documents to the Chinese bank about resumes of its workers in Pokhara. Eventually, on 1st January 2023, Pushpa Kamar Dahal, Nepal's then Prime Minister, officially opened the airport. In June, Chen Song, who was then the Chinese ambassador to Nepal, called the airport a new chapter of the Belt and Road cooperation. Interestingly, the first people who actually arrived in Pokhara were athletes and Chinese officials who had come for a goodwill dragon boat race. Their flight had been chartered and funded by Beijing. China, on its part, had refused to accept that the project was part of BRI, and Chen, the ambassador, later said that China would not force the name on Nepal, but that they will go with their own plans. In April 2025, this year, a government inquiry found irregularities and corruption of a massive scale by officials and lawmakers who had allowed CAMC to ignore its obligations and charge for work that it never completed. In a 36-page report, a parliamentary committee's investigation into the airport found that CAMC had failed to pay taxes, had not finished the project to specification, and had also used poor quality construction, all because of corruption and lack of accountability. Now, Nepal has to soon start repaying the loan using the profits which were to be generated by the airport. The airport has barely had any revenue and has fallen short of its projections for international passenger. There is only one weekly international route that lands in Pokhara. Now, while China celebrated the airport's construction as a flagship project of the BRI, Nepal reportedly rejected the designation. And why was it so? Because their acceptance of the designation would complicate diplomatic ties with India. India is a major destination for Nepali travelers and has not approved any international routes to Pokhara. Then, right before the Gen Z movement in August 2025, Nepal's communist government, led by KP Sharma Oli, had formally requested that China convert the 216 million airport loan into a grant, but no agreement was reached. What happens with the report now out remains to be seen. This is Debdutta for The Print. Keep watching for more such videos.